Welcome to the April 3rd special meeting of the Oak Point City Council. The meeting is called to order at 6:58 p.m. Every council member is present except for Council Member Ducker, who is out ill. And we have a quorum. We'll start with the invocation, please. Our gracious Father, as always, we thank you for beautiful Oak Point. Thank you for holding us in your hand and keeping us safe. We thank you for our staff and ask for your protection and blessings upon them. Guide all of us to make the very best decisions for the good people of Oak Point. Amen. Amen. And the pledges. John West wants to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is public input. Does anyone wish to speak at this time? If not, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, workshop on costs and estimates for the operation and maintenance budgets for the various public improvement districts and timeline for levy of assessments and required notices. Thank you, Mary.
Mayor and Council, Mary Cuddy, Freeworks, your administrator. If you remember, every year we come before you, have a workshop about what the costs are estimated to be for all the benefits that you all have out there, what the estimate would be. But then we mail notices, notifying people of this meeting, providing this information. Then we roll into what the statutory requirements are relative to letting the assessments for those components. So this is kind of our first annual step.
That one's not working? No, it's not working either.
I'm not holding my mouth right.
It didn't work at last meeting, so we'll just do it. Yeah, we'll just do it over here. You want to try using the mouse, see if it'll reach?
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
It doesn't reach, I'll do it for you.
Look at you.
Working.
Working too good.
Okay. So we're going to go through these budgets. So if you remember, most of your O&M heads are the Wildwood, and the Shaman Prairie, and they're tied to your PTS budget. So this is the chart that we have had for you guys since 2017, 2018. And so over here, I have to cursor. Can you see that?
Can you get the light?
I'm going to do it like.
Look at you. Thank you.
Okay. Over here you have the base year, which is the start. You have the SAP update year, so we're down here at 2024. You have the total number of lots for Wildwood and the total number of lots for Shade and Prairie. And then you have the total DPS budget requested. Now remember, your staff has put together the DPS budget that they're anticipating they're going to bring to you this summer and will hopefully be approved as part of your normal budget process. When the dollars are approved right here, the actual dollars are reconciled year over year. So you see this total actual DPS expenditures. So this 3.1 million, we didn't have last year, but we have it now. And so it informs us as to what was actually spent. Remember, the statute says that PID can only collect for actual costs. Making sure we have the dollars available now means we collect based on the budget, and then we have to reconcile back to the actual cost. So this actual cost tells us over here all the way to the right what O&M credit from previous years should be provided, i.e. what dollars did you budget but you did not spend by the end of the fiscal year that needs to go back in the form of a credit to the property owners for DPS costs. So that's what's occurring over here.
I think it's amazing that it's so close because you start so early and things can change.
It really, illustrates the time and effort your staff puts into estimating the budget and then really sticking to it. So you've always had the number of units be your deciding factor on how that DPS component is divided up. And so here you have your city allocation. This is all parcels inside the city that receive DPS services. Your ETJ allocation is all your parcels right here that tie back to these two numbers, your Wild Ridge and Cheyenne Prairie. Now remember, there is another PID that is in your ETJ that the development agreement did not contemplate that it would have an OEM component. You do collect a roadway maintenance fee. It's a flat fee that is collected with the administration cost on that Prairie Oaks PID, so that's why it does not show up here. So again, your budget allocation components tied to the actual units. We stick a population number in there that ties back with the county tells us is a per, per household estimate. You may or may not be right there. It's just more of a target. And then you have your cost per unit. So you can see that your cost per unit for your city allocation and your cost per unit for your ETJ are the same. So people living inside the city limits are paying the same for the DPS services that they're paying through their property taxes. Your ETJ PID are paying through their O&M assessment. So here's the number for your cost for DPS even after the credit. Now this increase is two things. 833 was last year's number, but we had a $130 credit. And then you have an increase additionally because you see from your budget last year to your budget this year, you've had a significant increase in cost on the DPS components. And usually that's driven by, what your staff sees as the needs. So any questions on this document before I roll forward? Okay, Cheyenne Prairie, just for folks who might be new to Cheyenne Prairie or who pick up this presentation, this is the location of Cheyenne Prairie. Wild Ridge is right here next to it and further to the west. It was created in 2017, approximately 100 acres. The maintenance agreement was first approved in 2017, and we use those funds to pay for DPS and road maintenance costs. Now your DPS and road maintenance costs is combined together, and so your total assessment we're anticipating right here for a residential lot in Cheyenne Prairie is about $1,200. It is a $230 increase. That is all related to your DPS costs. Your roadway maintenance component only changes about once every 5 years when we have the engineers update those numbers. And if you remember last year, it was time to update. And so we had some significant cost increases due to those roadway cost estimates being increased by engineers. Wild Ridge, and you faintly can see it, this little blue line that runs north and south here, that's the dividing line in the middle of Wild Ridge between the city limits and the ETJ. So folks who live in the ETJ, they pay this ETJ O&M PID assessment. Folks who live in the city limits do not. They pay through their taxes. If you have a property owner whose parcel sadly got split by the line, they have city taxes paid, and they pay their city taxes up to a certain number, and that is if they don't pay all of their taxes to the tune of what they would have paid for the O&M SAP, then they would get a bill for their SAP balance to ensure that they're paying their appropriate portion. So same information, years, how many acres, when it was started, it funds roadway and DPS, and then those excess funds are allocated the previous year. So any questions on Wild Ridge? Yes, sir.
Mary, the split city tax and PID, how many homes are we talking? And are they well aware that that's how that works? That's a realtor's issue. I know it's supposed to be a realtor's issue.
Well, interestingly enough, CAD used to just say, this parcel's in, that parcel's in, and they would just lump it one way or another. With the increase in the flexibility of technology, CAD literally goes in and puts that dividing line and says, oh, 30% of your building footprint is in the city limits, so 30% of your value is taxable by the city. And then the other 70% is in the ETJ and you don't get taxed.
And how many homes are we talking?
I think you probably have about 5 parcels.
That's it. Okay.
It's not bad.
But
That's not bad.
it's not bad, but if you think about it, some of them don't actually split the home, they split the lot, and the lot's not as bad. It's when the actual vertical value hits that I get all these, I'm getting both, how does this work? And I'm like,
And I get that. We had a gentleman here not long ago when we were discussing PIDs, and he was all upset about the whole idea that you had a PID. But I could see somebody really getting confused when they're paying a city tax and a PID, and go, I'm getting taxed for both.
right,
But in actuality, it's only a portion or it's private.
Yes. So
Thank
we
you.
try to make it, based on your direction, to give them all those credits based on their property taxes they pay, that's the direction for you all. So
Why do they do it though? Which one, don't the city limits, don't we go around property lines? Nobody's.
Originally, you may have, but when they flat, they ignore all of them. They just flat based on maximizing their development plan.
Thank you.
So this is just kind of a timeline. Wild Ridge is more complicated because each improvement area has a different number. So if you're in improvement area number 1 in Wild Ridge, you may not pay the same assessment for your own pit as someone in IA2. The reason being, the cost of the roadways by the engineers are different. There has to be wide, it has to be linear foot, and the methodology is set forth. Their overarching DPS cost is uniform because it ties back to that original, and we're all the benefit from the DPS services pay the same amount. So this is the details. Here it is in a chart form, just so you understand the mathematics and all the things that go into it. This has not changed since the previous years that we have shown this, so I'm happy to go into detail unless you're good with it, because remember, some of your phases are partially in the city limits, partially out of the city limits. Some are all in, some are all out.
Council, you okay?
I'm good.
This is really fun and explaining to staff. So just so you know, this is all of your phases. Here's their per lot assessment, so you see how they're different year over year, but generally their increases are all the same. Now, if we were in year 5 and we were changing roadway maintenance, these increases might not be the same because the roadway maintenance cost might change incrementally. But because all we're increasing this year is GPS costs, roadway stays the same for 5 years, this is where you are today.
Mary, is there a document that says every 5 years there will be a reevaluation?
It's footnoted in the original service and assessment plan, and I believe it's in every SAP update that we do for the O&M, that it'll be evaluated every 5 years. Okay, so that's all I have on the O&M PID. Again, this workshop is simply to say, here's this information, it's now in the public domain, so when we do mail notices and notify folks, we will do it well in advance so they can see out this information, so when the public hearing is held, if they have questions, they can certainly get that information prior to that public hearing.
Probably went over my head, Mary, that Wild Ridge increases were about $100 or less than 10%, and Shannon Prairie was almost 24%. Can you explain to me one more time why that's such a significant difference there?
Hold on. So you have a uniform increase. I don't have it here, but generally,
I was looking at the slide where you had
230.
2023 was 959, and 2024 was,
yeah, you have this 230. I think it has to do with how this flows. Let me get an answer for you on that.
I mean, you said it was all public safety.
It should have been all public safety, but I see
And it's
logic would tell
24%
me.
increase, it's pretty huge.
Yeah, logic would tell me that it should be all uniform, but when I start getting into this math, and I have percentages, and if I have some of the lots that we know are part in, part out, if they accounted for it, and I'll be honest, we love these spreadsheets, but I don't keep them updated, I have analysts that do that.
Sure.
So I'll dig into that for sure, and I'll make sure we have a summary answer to that question, so if we have people ask for this information in the recording, we'll have it.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? So I just want to make sure. Oh, there's something backwards. Sorry, I usually don't. Yeah, just making sure, you know, you've not really approved this number yet in your budget, but this is what your, you know, chiefs and city manager and staff have put together. And so in the event that this is higher or lower, it's going to get reflected in that next year. But because of the statutory pieces of notices, time to publish, we usually start this about the March, April timeframe. We just don't have a short time than that. Okay. So moving on to the next part. You have a couple of new development agreements that are being acted upon. So your first one is called 0.720 PID. That was a road and track development agreement that was entered into in 2022. There's quite a bit of discussion. Zoning was done at the same time. That property is right adjacent to Wildridge. So this is Wildridge 5 and 6. This is your large house. This is 720 or 722.
720.
And so this is a piece of property. Now, interestingly enough, the developers divided this into 3 phases. So think of this box as being 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Their first third is coming here in the middle. And so we have already started working through it. How does that work? Because generally you start from one end to the other. And so we're going to have to evaluate a special converted benefit and all the components that are necessary with the PID. But the district is 122 acres. We estimate that we'll bring forward the service and assessment plan on May 22nd, so that's our target right now. That is not your local council meeting date during the summertime months. We get our meetings because we have lots of information and lots of paperwork. And so your development agreement, in part, covered items like infrastructure, water, roadway, drainage, parks, trails, and then other infrastructure authorized by the PID Act. That's slightly different than what your Wildridge PID did before our time and your time as well. Others have set that up where your property inside the ETJ also has a WCID on it. So those owners pay an additional tax on top of the ETJ, the ONIV SAP assessment and the PID assessment. While they don't pay the property taxes of the city, they still pay that WCID tax. It's contemplated that we're not going to WCID here. Mustang will provide all the services, but the PID will be able to pay for all the infrastructure. And that was done way back when, statutory language and AP rules, we just didn't see that we clearly being able to do that. Don't know why, I wasn't part of that, but Mustang has the CCN. We do lots of work where cities issue PID debt, and the infrastructure is constructed and dedicated to Mustang. There will be an agreement, an interlocal agreement between you and Mustang that says if we, the city, issue PID bonds and we dedicate the infrastructure to you, Mustang, you're not going to go privatize it or do something that would cause our bonds to potentially become taxable. And while I say that, your bond counsel is here, so if you have any specific questions about the future bond issuance or anything tied to that, Jordan from our municipal rights to move into this.
What is a certificate of convenience?
So it's kind of like, you know, how your ETJ is a boundary. So your CCN is the boundary that an entity has the right to serve water, or they have the right to serve sewer. In this case, Mustang holds both the CCNs. So generally, the developer is providing us information, so they'll provide us costs. So that normal service and assessment plan you're used to seeing will come forward with kind of the plan of finance, what it looks like, and then we'll ask you to adopt a preliminary service and assessment plan. Your bond counsel, your financial advisor, your city attorney, ourselves, and your staff will all review that. We normally have weekly calls with the developer team, marching forward and getting all of those components. And the whole goal will be that we are in compliance with the development agreement. If we get asked to consider something that is not in compliance with the development agreement, we would have to come back to you all to give us policy direction or to amend that development agreement. So that development agreement kind of houses up the components that we know how to follow on our roadmap. So questions about this project? Yes, sir?
So 3 phases, one PID.
Yes, sir. So you can have, just like Waldridge is one PID, and we've had 6 phases. So they're going to do 1 phase. They've already started some of the dirt work. So we would anticipate that we would be issuing bonds towards the very end of their construction period, so that they are dedicating infrastructure right after the bonds are issued, and that they would be drawing down those dollars. It's a more efficient way. We're not having to expend the dollars from our proceeds uncapitalized interest, they're financing the front side of that and putting infrastructure in.
So ultimately it'll look the same, it'll be 0.720, PID 1, PID 2, PID 3.
It'll all be PID, it'll all be 720 PID, it will just be improvement area 1, improvement area 2, and improvement area 3. And then depending on the timing of 2 and 3, we could potentially go together. You just don't know. Any other questions on this one? So Chaparral Park, if you remember, we recently approved this development agreement with this developer. It's about 130 acres. We would anticipate that we're bringing to you not only the SAP component, but we're coming to you to create the PID. That PID's never been created, the other one has been created. So we have some more action items to step through with you all. Again, the statute sets that out very clearly. Our job is to check what the developer's giving us. Bond counsel will give those legal descriptions. Ultimately, bond counsel is responsible for taking that entire bond package to the attorney general for review. And so they stay in the mix, making sure they understand all the documents and all the components. Same thing here. State will provide water and sewer service. Funding the same thing, excuse me. On and off-site water, wastewater, the off-site is only financed by the PID to the extent that it benefits the PID. So here you actually have commercial property that fronts 720 that is not contemplated to be included in the PID, but it will be benefited by some of the water and sewer services. So we will actually allocate portions of the cost of the water and sewer to the commercial property, and the developer will not get reimbursed from the PID bonds for that. And it will only be the dollars and the infrastructure that wholly benefits the residential component that will be reimbursable to the developer.
How much the rules that case, how much you allocate percent, about area, about value, or?
Yes and yes. So that's my team's job, is to evaluate what's reasonable and what the market drives. Typically, it's done on estimated build-out value. Sometimes the developer's not the developer of the commercial and they don't know. So we actually have 2 levels of allocation. We'll allocate first based on acreage, so commercial and residential are being treated the same. After the acreage evaluation is done, those dollars, those costs are given to the developer for them to cover wholly, and the rest of the costs are eligible to be reimbursed, and then we allocate that based on estimated build-out value like we traditionally do. So this one would probably have 2-step process as opposed to the others, which is just one. Any questions about Chaparral Park?
Yeah, just one other question. So the PID bond covered this initial bill, right? And that then is on-site, off-site, and the non-Chaparral supporting portion of it, and supporting this other side. I'm really not missing.
Okay.
I'm missing that missing piece.
Let me rephrase. Off-site infrastructure would be infrastructure, let's just say that they have to drive up 720 in order to connect somewhere at a take point to serve this entire property. A portion of that cost, based on acreage, we would say goes to this commercial property. The remainder would go to residential. So if this was 10% of the total acreage, 10% of the total cost of that off-site water line would be allocated to the commercial, and the developer would not be eligible to be reimbursed from the PID bonds. He would have to carry that as his cost.
Okay, so the commercial developers are not responsible for that.
Well, no, because he still owns the land. Now, if he sells off the land and he sells it at a premium or a discount, we're indifferent to that as long as he's paying his portion that is allocable to the commercial. Typically, he'll have letters of intent or he'll have contracts on the commercial that aren't executable until his infrastructure is completed. So we'll make that determination. Their engineer will evaluate if they think something's unique. For example, if this commercial over here is actually getting water supply from right here and we're turning water at this road and it's never tying in, the engineers might make a determination that this water line right here wholly supports residential. But the engineers made that determination. We don't argue with that. The city engineer just affirmed that. But typically you've got one take point and then it forces you to loop somewhere else. And it's just 100% of the project's cost, but we don't want to burden, we want to comply with the statute. We don't want to burden the PID with some parcel that's in a benefit that didn't pay their way. So we make sure that they allocate costs to them as well. So did that answer your question? Okay.
Those are for business.
Yeah, same thing will happen like with this main entrance, they'll try to tell me that it's only for residential, and I just smile and say, no, there's access point right here, clearly benefits, so you need to do some benefit to these guys.
Well, and it's still a water road.
Same thing. Same. Yeah. Okay, any more questions on Chaparral Park? So we have a timeline that we have shared, I don't think I put it in here, I did share it with staff, that just kind of marks out the dates, and so I think Joey's pushed several of those dates out to you all already, and so our goal will be to keep all of the items together, so we're not getting up here once a week. And so the next meeting we would anticipate it being on April 30th, and so that's where you're going to see, most likely, several things, the creation ordinance for Chaparral, our resolution, and then the PSAP for Roma, and so we'll bring those things to you. Remember, they can be very voluminous, and when we go to the bond issuance, those plums, those preliminary and limited offering memorandums, your underwriter puts together, and it discloses all the information about the city, how well it's run, the developer, how well he's run, the development, where it's located, how well that area is doing, and then all the other disclosures and comments, and then all the other agreements. So you get a 1,500-page package in your email on your doorstep, which says it's a bond. Just remember, the financial advisor's gone through it, your bond counsel's gone through it, your city attorney will be signing off on it, and issuing the opinion letter, as will your bond counsel and your tax counsels. We've gone through it, staff's gone through it, and we've all reviewed and confirmed, to the best of our knowledge, this is accurate, we've taken tight numbers, FA's taken time with the underwriter, so it is a well-reviewed document.
And we're thankful for your assistance.
Absolutely.
When I first became familiar with PIDs, they scared me a little, and I would go through every page. And not that I won't still look at everything, but to have professionals looking for us is very important. Thank you. And on scheduling the future meetings, I think you're saying that we're going to be looking at both of these PIDs, these different PIDs, and they may not track perfectly because they're in different points of time, but it's a time savings to have them both in the same meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And the statute requires public hearings to be called for creation of things, public hearings to be called for your own PIDs. And so it's just very helpful if we're having one meeting and we're covering all those things. And to your point here, we may be creating here and then levying and issuing bonds here, but it'll all be on the same night, so we're taking care of it all at once here in month.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anything to add? Okay, so if I can turn this on myself. Okay, so your item number 8 is one of the first steps on your Chaparral Park. It is a resolution accepting a petition. Remember, it is created by petition, so the developer has to petition you with the legal description that ties to what I showed you. That legal description there, and you, according to statute, have to call public hearing, publish notice in the newspaper, mail notice to property owners. And so one council helps staff get through that part. And so that resolution does not create, but it puts in motion all of the items that you need to do in order on your next meeting on April 30th that you can create the PID.
Just kind of ask for resolution.
It would be the time to ask for maybe a motion.
I motion a resolution accepting the petition and ordering a public hearing regarding the creation of the Chaparral Park Public Improvement District within the city.
Second.
We have a motion by Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Basket. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Lusk. Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously.
Good
Cool. Do you have any more for us, Mary, or Jordan?
No, I work with Mary.
He was just here looking good.
Yeah, that's what I'm mostly here for.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Mary likes to have an attorney, and he's not usually for this, usually for somebody else to come.
Thank you for being here.
Is there any further business? If not, the meeting is adjourned at 7:28 p.m.
Mary, thank you for making things so simple.
Oh,
You know, yeah, this is a lot of new stuff to me. I went to DNL training and of course, a lot of this was covered, that was like a 2-day, let's do like an